Hello and welcome to Encore, the arts and culture show here on France 24. Coming up, from the streets to the gallery, my guest today has gone from tagging trains in Harlem to creating large canvas pieces displayed in Parisian palaces. From air sprays to brush strokes, he's translated his roots as a graffiti artist into colourful paintings. Jonone joins me on set to talk about his artistic journey as his work goes on display at the Art Paris Art Fair. Let's go meet him. Jonone, thanks so much for joining us on today's show.
Thank you.
You're taking part in the Art Paris Art Fair, as I just mentioned. It's a huge international fair. Did you ever dream that when you started out tagging trains in New York that your work would one day be displayed at such an event?
Of course, I always knew that. Yeah, of course. Yeah, I'm talented. I'm the next Picasso. No, it's a big surprise for me also.
And how does it feel to have your work go and show at a place like this?
Well, it feels like finally I've arrived to be recognized in the international art circle, and my work hasn't just been marginalized in one little criteria, so it feels good, yeah.
All right, well, before we get more about your fascinating artistic journey from the streets to the gallery, let's find out a bit more about the Art Paris Art Fair. Hundreds of pieces of contemporary art from galleries across 20 countries are on display this year under the celestial dome of the Grand Palais for 4 days. Chinese artists, though, are particularly in the limelight, with the country chosen as this year's guest of honour. One artist's work who you won't be able to miss is Liu Bolin. He usually blends into the background, but this year he's packing more of a punch, as Thomas Waterhouse explains.
He's best known for being the invisible man, from supermarket shelves to roadblocks. With his face and hair made up and clothes daubed, Liu Bolin proves time and again that he's a master of camouflage, quietly blending into the background. But for his latest sculpture, he's carrying much more of a punch. Crashing onto the doorstep of Paris's Grand Palais is his 7-ton, 12-foot iron fist. Delivered by plane in 8 separate pieces, pointing downwards, it's the opposite of the revolutionary symbol of the raised fist. It talks of the daily political and social pressures his people face.
This work really stems from a childhood memory. When I was young, the fist was everywhere, in newspapers and on posters. I think it's still an image that we see in China today, but it's more invisible. I'm using this sculpture as a way to ask if our lives have changed. The fist has gone, but has anything really changed?
His installation forms part of the latest Paris Art Fair, which this year is in honour of China. Coinciding with the state visit of President Xi Jinping, it celebrates 50 years of ties between Paris and Beijing. But like Liu Bolin, several artists on show are using the platform to criticise rather than celebrate their homeland.
Chinese artists today seem to have more social preoccupations. They talk of urbanism and the brutal changes going on in their country.
Over 90 Chinese artists will display their wares at the 4-day event, but not all of them will be hung on walls or placed on stands. Conceptual artist Li Wei has chosen to dress as a cosmonaut and fly over the show for a special live performance.
Lots of interesting things there that are going on display. Looking forward to checking it out. But John, even though China has been named as the guest of honour at this year's fair, the organisers of the Art Paris Art Fair say they're still supportive of homegrown talent. France is known as being very supportive of the arts. Was this part of the reason why you decided to make the move from New York to Paris? You've called Paris home since the 80s.
Yeah, that's exactly why, because I think coming from New York, I always had this image of Paris as being the cultural center of the world. And as a small child, I was always looking pictures of Picasso painting here, or the period of Montparnasse and all the bohemians. So I think Paris is the ultimate place for a bohemian or somebody that doesn't want to work.
Well, talking about your childhood, let's take it back to the beginning. You mentioned there some very well-known, iconic artists, but you don't have any formal art training yourself. Yeah. However, you grew up in Harlem, surrounded by the artistic community.
Yeah.
You were introduced to street art at quite a young age. How did this influence now your art and your desire to become an artist?
I mean, that I didn't go to school for art, I think that's one thing, but it also made me very curious and made me very open to a lot of different types of art. So coming from Harlem, which is the cultural center for me from New York, it opened me up to seeing a lot of different listening to a lot of different types of music and seeing a lot of different types of art. So I think I went to the best art school in the world, yeah.
Yeah, you met loads of interesting people in that artistic community, and you actually went on to create a graffiti group called 156 All Stars. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
156 All Stars, that was sort of like a group of friends. We all grew up with a common goal, a common interest, which was to bring culture and also paint up the town. Because you got to imagine, New York during the 80s was, especially where I came from, was like a dead zone. There was no museums, there was no sort of like places to meet. So 156 sort of like created its own history and created its own art that they wanted to see.
It's fascinating. It's hard to imagine now. New York is such a cultural hub these days. But I read that, your work in general doesn't really match up, I suppose, to the archetypal notion of what a graffiti artist is.
Yeah.
I read that you even used to take paintbrushes with you as well as spray cans, even back in the early days.
Yeah.
How would you describe your art?
Freestyle. I listened, I seen my history in Harlem, and I say to myself, there was a lot of jazz musicians there, especially Ornette Coleman, which was the inventor of like free jazz, and so I see my work as very poetic in a way, and not at all figurative or representative. So it's free, and that's the way I like to be, free.
All right, well, let's see you freestyling. Let's check out you in action now, making some of your art. Jonone, I'm really fascinated. How and why did you make the move from graffiti art in the streets to creating work on canvas?
It was an evolution for me. It was just like, I think my work, it fit into a canvas, whereas some artists that paint in the streets, their work is more made to be seen in the streets, whereas my work, the way it evolved, it was common. It was like obvious that it was to be put on canvases, and people were supposed to come to galleries to see it. Hey, by the way, that looks like fun. What I just finished doing.
It does look like fun.
Yeah,
It
that was in Russia. It looks like I had a good time there.
It looks all of your paintings and your work is very colourful. It looks like you do have a lot of fun with your work. I read that when you moved to Paris, you met an artist called A1, who was sort of your link between the street and the gallery. Did he have an impact on changing your perception of art and your art in particular?
Yeah, I mean, coming here to Paris, I didn't speak French at all. So having like a road partner coming from the same neighborhood as me was great. And he was also a very talented artist, so he influenced me into this, into like this game of marketing, and selling yourself as an artist. Because there's one thing painting, but then there's the other aspect of of selling yourself, of surviving out of your art, which is a whole different story.
It's a real industry, isn't it?
Yeah.
But you seem to have picked up the rules of the game pretty well, because you've gone on to achieve quite a large success. In 2007, for example, one of your pieces sold for around 25,000 euros at auction, which at the time was one of the highest prices for a piece of French graffiti art. You were just telling me before the show started that most recently you sold a piece for some 65,000 euros. Graffiti work these days, the likes of Banky and stuff can sell up for millions and millions of dollars. Do you think that the perception of graffiti art and street art has changed? Has it become more marketable?
I think it's definitely changed, but I think it hasn't reached its potential. I think it's worth even much more than that, because I think street artists, they are marking our generation and they are marking our society in a lot of different ways, whereas other artists from other
Genres, yeah.
have are not as popular as street artists. Street artists is all over the world. It's an international movement, so
absolutely.
I think it hasn't reached its potentials yet. We're just seeing a little bit of it so
Okay,
far.
well, talking about street art, you've worked a lot with the charity Abbé Pierre, which is a charity that helps out the homeless and the poor, and it's named after a French priest who did the same. The idea of street art, I suppose, is giving free art to the masses.
Yeah.
Are these still ideals that you abide by?
Yeah, I think I make a good living off my art, and it's also good to give back to the community and give back to something that I'm sensitive to, which is people that live in the streets and people that are suffering, and that's something that touches me because I come a little bit from that group of people. I come from nothing. I invented my own story. So sometimes you got to give a helping hands to people in need. And Abbé Pierre and the Foundation, I think it's a good concept, and they're trying to do good. So I'm more than proud to be able to participate in what they do. So I'm a fan of theirs.
Okay,
Yeah.
absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Jonone, for coming in to speak to us today. We have to leave it there, I'm afraid. And thank you to you for tuning in. Don't forget you can check out some more of Jonone's work at Art Paris Art Fair this week, as well as hundreds of other contemporary artists. We're going to leave you now with some images of Jonone in the streets of Paris, creating an image of Abbé Pierre. Enjoy and see you for more culture soon.
Je l'ai. Il faut que ce soir même, dans toutes les villes de France, des pancartes s'accrochent sous une lumière. Dans la nuit,